Hi, everyone. Hope you're all well. My name is DC. I'm a venture partner at Sure Valley. We might just give it a minute or two just to give everybody the opportunity to log in. I hope you're all having a fantastic start to the week this week. Um, as we always say, it's a week in AI. You never know where it's going to bring you. So delighted to be here today to kind of talk to you about our perception of where things are in the AI market at the moment. But as we all know, right now things could be changing. There could be press releases. There could be anything going on right at the moment. So it's a very exciting time to be engaged in AI. Um, with that, yeah, I think we'll just power on. So as I said, my name is DC Cahalane. I'm a venture partner at Sure Valley Ventures, SVV. We are a specialist artificial intelligence VC investor. We have been investing in AI since 2017, and actually end of 2018, we actually exited our first AI company, which now we realize was a generative AI company. Of course, back then we had different terminology for it. So we have been investing in some amazing AI founders for many, many years now. I think from our perspective, we are a bunch of former operators turned investors with a deep technical knowledge of AI. And as I said, we've been doing this a long, long time. And obviously, as founders ourselves, we have a bunch of experience of exits. So we think this positions us really strongly in terms of AI at the moment. I'm going to just tell you one or two brief things about us before we kick on. So this is a wonderful photograph of our team here. As I said, we are a specialist investor. Delighted that our two funds are both anchored by government institutions through the British Business Bank in the UK and Enterprise Ireland in Ireland. On average, we see about 3,000 AI startups every year to really try and find the very, very best investment prospects for our investors. And as I said, the combination of our technical expertise and our operational expertise means that we've been investing ahead of trend for quite some time now. We invest at the pre-seed and pre-seed level, and very much in the meaningful applications of AI technology. So AI at the engineering layer, or someone who's using AI in a very, very vertical specific application. We invest in AI businesses, not just AI technologies. And I think that's really important at the moment. We're seeing an awful lot of really great AI technologies. We're seeing some good AI products. And we're still at that level where we're just seeing the very bare bones of great AI businesses. We're based across Ireland and the UK, and that's the end of the sales pitch. No more sales pitch for the rest of the presentation. So what I want to talk to you, just before we kick off, I will say that this is obviously the first of a series of 3 webinars that we're running just to give people the broad scope of the current state of AI. Next Monday, my colleagues Barry and John will be running a session on AI agents and the transformational role that they're going to have in business. And the following Monday, Brian and Sarab are going to cover how to invest in AI in 2025, what you need to be thinking about in terms of opportunities and strategies. So let's kick things off. So welcome to the AI future. I think to get where we're going, you got to think about where we've come from. And we're in this amazing world where, where not so long ago, or maybe in this case, a long time ago, we thought there'd be a market for 5 computers. And I feel like that's where we are with AI at the moment. I think people massively underestimate the impact that AI is going to have on our world. AI will, without a doubt, be the defining technology of this century. Already we're seeing the opportunities being measured in the trillions, not billions anymore. And on an average rate, it's just growing and growing and growing. The numbers I'm showing you here on screen are pretty pessimistic pretty pessimistic projections of where things could go over the next 5 years. And it's really important to realize that it's not in just a single industry, as we're going to see. It's entirely across the entire board. The way you need to think about AI technology is not as a trend. AI technology is a technology wave. So it is going to have the impact on our society the same way that moving from premises to cloud, desktop to mobile, and now AI is going to be measured in terms of the old way of writing code and the new way of writing code. It's not a trend. Everybody's used to hearing the terms like fintech, cyber tech, med tech, all this sort of stuff. That's not. They are trends. AI is a wave. In fact, if you look here, here's a graph that measures kind of the what they call the adoption impact index in terms of how much of an impact on the economy and on life in general are different waves going to have. And you can see the internet, the mobile technology wave. AI is definitely well out there in terms of the effect it's going to have on what we're up to. The way I like to think about AI is very simply put. The Industrial Revolution was about the industrialization of manual labor. It was taking, you know, building of a chair or a table and allowing you to do a lot of it all at once to a very high standard. I believe the AI revolution is nothing more than the industrialization of the knowledge economy. We have built a whole economy around data and around the processing of information. The AI revolution is just going to allow us to do that better, faster, smarter, and in more detail. It's going to allow us to embed stuff like agentic AI and have a new whole AI workforces, agents working by themselves, working together, and then multiple different types of agents working together alongside human beings. And as I said, that's what Barry and John will talk a lot about in next week's presentation. Fundamentally, AI is going to have two big effects on the global economy. It's going to create a massive productivity increase while at the same time having a massive reduction in cost. It's going to provide for some massive economic changes in terms of the new heavy data economy. We're going to talk a little bit later about the significant need for power generation. Trying to live AI, as I say, will be like the equivalent of living without an internet or mobile phone. You can still do it, and there are days where we all feel like life would be better. But fundamentally, you are giving yourself a major handicap by not embracing AI. And the thing that's going to be very interesting is that at some stage, very soon, English is going to become the most used programming language in the world. Because as we all know, the one thing AI does better than most things is produce code. So what does this all mean? It means if you're in the business of investing in startups, no matter what you believe about AI, no matter whether you think it's a hype or a trend or whatever, no matter how many times you've seen the Terminator movies, whatever your feelings are, you cannot afford to not understand what's going on in artificial intelligence. What we're going to do now is we're going to talk about some of the key trends that we're seeing at the moment and give you some thoughts on them. I mean, fundamentally, that where we have to start is the acceleration of AI. I put this slide in here because this is a slide from a presentation I did as a keynote at the Intertrade Ireland conference just in March of this year, where I was asked to predict what's coming next. And I think if you look at what we're covering here from the profitability pressure, the agentic boom, the infrastructure race, it's only been 6 months. And I think every one of these has been proven out. The only one that I got completely and utterly wrong was the bubbler breakthrough, where at that point in March, I was very excited about a European company called Lovable.dev that in its first 12 months in business looked like it was going to do 10 million in ARR. I've gotten that completely wrong because as we head towards Lovable's first birthday in November, it looks like that 10 million number is going to be closer to $150 million or more. It's already in May, I think, hit 130 million in ARR. So it just should give you a sense of the acceleration that's happening. And I mean, we're seeing that, even when you go to the large models, when you look at something like OpenAI, their ChatGPT product, I mean, we are seeing adoption faster than anything we've ever seen before, faster than X and Twitter, than Instagram, Facebook. And even a couple of years ago, we were talking about TikTok in terms of like being the fastest growing product ever. Nothing compares or contrasts to the speed at which ChatGPT has kind of come into the consciousness. We're all now, we all talk about, the phrase to Google it coming up. Now ChatGPT has become kind of the generic term for using an AI agent to search for something. On average, we're seeing somewhere in the region of 700 million weekly active users with over 20 million paying subscribers, and already, looking like they'll do at least 15 billion in revenue this year. But there's absolutely no signs of this slowing down at all, at all, at all. Like if you even just look at the key underlining data in what's going on in OpenAI, the user growth is up, the subscriber growth is up, and the revenue growth is up. and it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. There are absolutely no signs of slowing down. You may have seen in the papers this week, or even the digital papers this week, their news of committing to signing a commitment with Oracle that will they will be spending something in the region of 300 billion on compute. This is a company that isn't even making anywhere close to that. But obviously, the implication is that everything that they're projecting forward means that they expect to need the capacity that Oracle can provide at that level. It's not just an open AI race here by any standard. When you look at recent filings from Google, SEC filings from Google, they are talking about a 50x growth multiple since this time last year. And currently, the sheer volume of information that's been processed by Google Gemini is just going up and up and up and up. And every time you try and measure the numbers, even on a weekly basis, the numbers get bigger and bigger and bigger. Um, the challenge, of course, is that the bigger the bigger it gets, the faster stuff is accelerating, the more the challenges come out. So at the moment, the demand for compute, the demand for data centers, the demand for the shortfall in data center capacity is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And obviously, some companies are seeing a huge boost for this. People like Nvidia, who are providing all the hardware in these data centers, are seeing a massive opportunity in this. We'll talk a little bit more about data centers and the power requirements later in the presentation. Um, but the other great thing is that as capability and demand goes up, the cost is coming down. So, one of the biggest challenges that we saw ourselves in terms of the businesses that we support in terms of investing in was, when they were getting started, there was a considerable cost to them using the very best AI. The big things that we've seen in this space is that, as the competency goes up, the sheer volume of usage of these models means that the cost is coming down, and the cost is coming down substantially. On top of that, you're seeing the model operators get very, very clever in terms of you'll note, say, with something like ChatGPT 5 that came out recently, even if you're just a home user of the product, it now selects the most efficient model for you. So one of the big challenges that one of the big opportunities we're going to see going forward is models that can understand AI agents that can understand which model they should be using in order to optimize capability and optimize cost. And this isn't, just to be clear, this is not just the game in consumer AI. I think sometimes there's a perspective out there that, oh, we're all using ChatGPT at home to look up the football results and all this sort of stuff. But, that we haven't really seen the use in businesses yet. Absolutely not the case. You can see the share of US businesses with paid subscriptions to AI is estimated to be something in the region of 42% of US businesses. And Gartner predicting that by 2027, about 40% of all enterprises will deploy autonomous agents. And it just makes sense. It just makes sense that, no matter what your business is, whether you're the most high-tech business in the world, or whether you're just deploying AI agents purely to help your back-end productivity, I think the opportunity for the use of AI in business is much, much bigger than people are considering. A lot of people are thinking about the high-tech use of agents and not thinking about the small, laborious tasks that everybody has to complete in their business, from managing expenses to producing invoices, that AI can really, really help with. I think we're seeing that even in the first period this year, we're seeing a massive increase in the number of AI agents being used in the enterprise. We're seeing an awful lot, and even we would see ourselves, an awful lot of companies experimenting with agents. A lot of companies, maybe where individuals at home have been using agents to help them with their own personal productivity at work. And now those agents are being brought into the enterprise. So I think we're just going to continue to see this number go up and up and up. We are We are definitely seeing, like, it's not just in the number of agents being used, but actually we're also seeing the performance of the agents themselves doubling, on average every 70 days. I think we all see this ourselves on a practical level. Every time there's a new update to ChatGTP or to Claude or to Gemini, it's not just about the new capabilities that are delivered, but actually also fundamentally it's about the speed at which the a lot of the tasks are getting completed at. So you'll notice yourself. I had an experience this morning, a report I run every month for myself. This morning I ran it using GPT-5, and like I could almost not believe that it had produced a report in such a time. So we have to think about that it's not just about the agents getting better, they're getting faster. And now we're getting into that experience where, different models can provide a certain level of optimization for different tasks. What this means in practicality is, you know, the same model that you need in order to produce like video content or audio content, you don't need to use that high performance model for something as basic as, you know, creating some marketing content for your website. And I think this is a trend that we'll continue to see, this idea of, individual agents using the most optimum model for for what they need at the time. Of course, in terms of the breakout use case, we are absolutely seeing agentic coding as the breakout use case. What is agentic coding? Well, it is without a doubt like the next evolution of traditional software development. As a software graduate myself, who hasn't coded in a long, long time, it is amazing how when you go into one of these platforms, whether it be Cloud Code or whether it be Cursor, whether it be lovable.dev, the ability for these platforms to just really optimize coding. We're seeing this in a huge way in terms of the companies that we back and invest in, where one or two developers assisted by the latest agentic coding software and a couple of agents in the background, can produce the work of 8 to 10 developers, no problem. And this solves a huge problem that everybody was aware of in the industry, which is, just the availability of software engineers was a huge limiting factor in terms of software's ability to add economic value to economies. Now not only can you produce better code, faster code, but actually, a lot of the for those of you who's never written code, there's a lot of very low level task involved in code, from bug fixing to just looking for errors and stuff like that. The incredible thing about these new platforms is they just remove all of the low level work and allow the users to really, really focus on producing high quality software. And this, we're only going to see this get better and better and better. There's a rumor that the benchmark that people are putting out there is that at someday there will be a software developer who manages to build, the world's very, very first one-person unicorn. And it sounds like a ridiculous concept, but actually theoretically, one person could manage a whole bunch of agentic developers and could get there. Um, so we're seeing at the moment, we're seeing the platforms that are operating in the space, Lovable, Cursor, OpenAI, and others, just seeing unbelievable growth and expansion. I mentioned earlier Lovable, a company that I think came into existence on something like the 11th or 12th of November 2024, and by the time we get to that point this year, should be somewhere in the region of 150 to 160 million dollars in ARR. Just absolutely incredible numbers. Um, and also, obviously, agentic coding, as well as being, something that is being used for consumer purposes and just by individual software developers, we're also seeing substantive use in the enterprise as well. I think we'll all be familiar with, over the last couple of weeks and months, seeing various stories where companies like Microsoft and others are talking about the percentage of their code base internally that is now AI generated. And I've seen numbers from 20 to 40% for companies like Salesforce, Microsoft, and others. in terms of the many, many use cases of coding in the enterprise. So I think you're looking at everything from, you can see on the graph here, all the different things, for those of us who don't work in software development, we just think coding is this magical language that gets produced. But actually, there are so many tasks within software development and also just in the wider opportunity for the establishment of AI agents in enterprise settings, from marketing to customer service, product and design. I mean, the opportunity for a business to just massively increase its productivity is second to none. So, like as an example of some of the stuff that we're talking about and looking at is, here are some practical examples from a survey that, how are AI agents actually delivering value at the moment? The number one place that everybody is seeing it is in productivity. You can now, I mean, on the most basic level, most businesses, you have employees who work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. You can now have AI agents do similar workloads, except they can do it, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and you won't have a trade union on your back. We're seeing a massive amount of cost saving because of this productivity that can be created. So I won't go through them all, but you can see here a whole list of very practical ways that AI agents are already delivering value. Um, and also, I suppose what's equally as important is like everything, there's a level of trust. We have to trust AI agents to get work done. But fundamentally, we have to trust employees, human employees also to get work done. So right now, the sort of places where I think the enterprise is most comfortable in the use of AI is obviously in the analysis of data, generating insights, stuff that was taking, people days and days or weeks to compile reports, you can now do in minutes. Stuff like in our own use, say within SVV, things like market, and every time a startup comes to us, we have to do a market analysis of like, what's the future potential? What's the market for this like at the moment? What's the future potential of it? We now have the ability to almost do those instantaneously. So it's great to see that actually, like when you look at the top use cases that executives trust AI for, you have the analysis of data and generating insights. You have the ability, they trust in the AI's ability to learn and improve performance over time. And actually, what's really encouraging is that they strongly believe in the ability for AI to collaborate with human team members in day-to-day operations. That's critical for the adoption of AI. If you don't believe that your human team members are going to engage with AI and engage in what's going on, it's going to be incredibly difficult to see the adoption of AI across your thing. Then I think if you go down further down the list, you see the obvious one, which is like conducting financial transactions. Still 20% of executive surveyed believe in the ability of an AI to conduct financial transactions. I think at the moment we're seeing a huge amount of applications of AI agents in financial services. So I would expect that, if we come back and look at this survey again in a couple of months, I think you'll see massive improvements in some of those statistics. What are we using AI agents for at the moment? Well, I think the fundamental thing that we're seeing a lot of is if your business is built on workflows. If you have a process within your business that your team members are following, well, the amazing thing is that AI agents can essentially come in, take that workflow, and they can repeat it as often as you'd like. So I think at the moment, ironically, we're seeing a lot more adoption of AI in large businesses than maybe we are in traditional SMEs. And fundamentally, that's because large enterprise scale businesses are already designed to work on workflows. If you're working in a very, very large company, that business is built on process. It's built on process to allow for the day when you go on your 2 week summer vacation, the whole business doesn't shut down. So those sort of businesses that are already built on end-to-end workflows, it is incredibly easy to introduce AI agents to carry out some or all of that work. So what we're seeing at the moment is that you're on average, and McKinsey are saying that AI is boosting enterprise productivity by somewhere in the region of 20 to 30%. Um, and actually, the other thing which is very, very interesting is traditionally when you see a large shift in technology waves like this, one of the challenges is, the amount of time it takes to actually get up and get running. I think what we're seeing across the board is that anybody who is being an early adopter in the AI space is fundamentally seeing, a very, very, very quick return on their investment. Um, It is, I suppose, the hardest thing to when you're talking about AI, and even in terms of a presentation like this today, is that the real challenge is that change is coming so fast. Even as we look at graphs like this, and you're talking about the models that exist here, those models, are changing on a weekly basis, so not quite, we're not on a daily basis yet. So therefore, what's becoming incredibly difficult is to almost benchmark. Part of the challenge is that as these models evolve, as they get better, as they get bigger, it's difficult to benchmark them against each other. But I think what the general exception is, or a general exception is that you know using any sort of an AI model on any sort of an economically valuable knowledge work type task, ChatGPT's output is comparable or sometimes better than humans. And I think fundamentally, it's saying something is better than humans is obviously a very emotive term. But I think what it's essentially saying is less prone to error. And this is just down to basic practicalities of, the agent will only do exactly what it's asked to do. Sometimes as humans, we forget stuff. We make mistakes. We put the wrong number into the wrong box on the spreadsheet. I think what we're generally acknowledging is, so we're not acknowledging that AI agents are absolutely flawless, but what we are saying is that some of we call it the casual mistakes that we would make as humans, AI agents aren't inclined to make those as often. Um, so I think I was reading this the other day, so I just thought it was interesting to share with you all, which was that we are talking about the ability for this to be very substantive. Goldman Sachs reckoned that generative AI could lift global GDP by around 7%, and it could raise productivity growth over by 1.5% per person per year over a decade. That's kind of like generally it, try to imagine a world where we increase the general productivity of the world by 10%. Like, it is kind of mind-boggling as to what exactly could happen in that space. But the other thing that's very interesting is we talk an awful lot about what effect is this going to have on jobs. I think what we're talking about is that actually, the way I like to think about it there will be changes in the job market. But I mean, what you're still seeing is, if you're an A player in your industry, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. If you're a B player, well, the opportunity exists now for AI to assist you to becoming an A player. So I think what we're seeing in general is that right now, these sectors that are adopting a lot of AI, there is a massive productivity growth that they're experiencing, which is going to allow them, it's going to allow investment in other areas, investment in other sectors. And as business grows, the need for labor is also going to grow. It's just going to grow in a very different manner than maybe we traditionally looked at. So that's a lot. That's covers kind of a lot of the acceleration. As I said, the frightening thing about it is I'm pretty sure, even though I looked at, researched, and updated many of those numbers on Saturday, most numbers in AI this year at the moment only last a week at most. What I want to talk about now a little bit about is capex. the absolutely astronomical amounts of money that we are seeing invested in AI infrastructure at the moment. Um, we are experiencing what somebody said to me recently is an AI investment super cycle. We have never seen the amount of investment that we are currently seeing invested in just pure hardware bills. So, like Microsoft, will invest at least, and I'm going to only say at least these sums of money to build AI data centers. Alphabet, these are coming from their SEC filings for the year. So these are not like made up numbers. These are numbers that they are committing to investing. They're going to, you add up those numbers, and it is not small and it is not insignificant. Um, I think what's so significant about this is that, like, you were talking about these large companies spending sums of money that are significant proportions of their annual sales. And that should be every indication, again, like to something we covered earlier, which is this notion of, that the AI is not a trend. AI is a fundamental technology wave. The last time that we saw these levels of percentage levels of investment was in the early days of the internet. And you can see here companies like Meta, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, all fighting hard. Apple not fighting hard because they're not investing in the data center space at the moment. Um, and obviously, you're also seeing that in terms of the expenditures that companies are making. And again, these are current state of play. On an average weekly basis, we see further announcements. Probably the most significant one that we've seen in the last week or two would be the addition of Oracle, who have always been a very significant data center play, but they have very much come out to play now as being a substantive partner for OpenAI over the next couple of years. And for a brief moment last week, over a 30-minute period, increased Larry Ellison's personal wealth by 300 billion, leapfrogging him to make him the richest man in the world for 35 minutes or so. Like, we are expecting that the data center space is now essentially working out to somewhere in the region of 1.2% of US GDP this year. We've all seen the announcements from the White House and from the companies in general regarding the sheer quantity of money that's going to be invested in this, talking about somewhere in the region of 400 billion being invested in data center space. And I know, talking to Barry Downs, our managing partner, recently, Barry was equating this to a survey he had seen, where if you look at the infrastructure bill for Germany over the next 10 years, they're expecting to spend about 500 billion on the roads, infrastructure, etc., in Germany. So that should give you a sense of the scale. In Ireland, we recently passed an infrastructure bill for the next 10 years in the region of 275 billion. So this is not chump change that's being invested inside in these big operations. Just going to very briefly cover the area of power. Something we're talking an awful lot about, both from an infrastructure capacity, its role in AI, and also I think has become, an area of common discussion, among governments, etc. So, I mean, we are looking at a world where AI is very easily going to be 50% of all data center usage globally going forward. And that is not insignificant. By 2030, AI data centers could account for nearly just over 8.5% of all electricity use, up from about 3.5% today. Um, and we're probably looking at a position where globally it could be somewhere similar. Now, in Ireland alone, there's estimates that about 15% of all of our power generation at the moment is going towards data centers. But I think as we see the actual technology itself improve in these data centers, as they start replacing, data centers for many, many years have been a great business to be in, but actually the cost of retrofitting hardware has been significant. As those hardware costs start to come down, as the data centers themselves get more efficient, I think we will see a balancing out in the use of electricity in these spaces. But I mean, we do need to think about this idea of supercomputers as cities. I mean, we are going to be seeing a situation where there will be data centers that will be using the electricity equivalent of large cities. I think that the statistic that I saw at the weekend was that by 2030 large projects in the US will be using the equivalent power for like 7 to 9 million houses. It's incredible is generating and all is doubling, and then also the ability for the energy industry to try their best to catch up. We have some players who are doing better than most. China being the standout example, where China's capacity in terms of total megawatt usage is about 5 or 6 times growing, about 5 or 6 times faster than anywhere else in the world. And in a world where the more data centers you have, the more compute you have, the smarter your models can get. You are going to see the ability of AI is going to be so tied to the ability of data centers, which is going to be so tied to the ability to the energy sector in general. So in so many ways, the future of AI is all about the future of energy. And I think in a lot of cases, this could be the unlock for so much of the sustainable energy projects that we've been trying to advance and trying to get supported over the last few years. In terms of we can't but talk about the revenue here, because one of the challenges normally when you're talking about the adoption of new AI tech, of the option of new technologies in general, is you just see this massive investment that has to be done up front. And then the hope is you invest now and you harvest later. But actually what we're seeing is not that usual trend, because you are seeing companies generating significant revenue already. Now, they're also, it'd be nice if Sam Altman was putting this 12 billion in his back pocket, but obviously the costs and expenses are significant. But it is still a very interesting perspective on AI, in that, some people use it for free, but the majority of people who are getting tremendous value out of AI have no problem paying for it. And I think in a lot of cases, this is because much of the value we get from use of AI is personally beneficial to us. So therefore, it's not like, hey, somebody gave me a better spreadsheet software for work. It's kind of like, well, now actually the person whose time is being saved is mine. I'm getting the little dopamine hit from completing my tasks. So I think there is less resistance to paying for it than maybe traditional software in the past. But again, the numbers here are quite staggering in terms of, OpenAI, 12 billion, like Anthropic 4 billion. You're looking at Microsoft in terms of quarterly revenue added, and it's all going along, and then suddenly bang, you get to the middle of the year, you get to Microsoft's big announcement season, and suddenly you're literally seeing a doubling of their cloud revenue. We saw the same thing this week, as I said, with the Oracle announcement, where even though people have recognized Oracle's revenue in terms of cloud for many, many, many years, suddenly this week they're announcing kind of pipeline of almost $1 trillion over the next couple of years in terms of commitments from OpenAI and other people. But again, like just to mention this, we mentioned a couple of times this, it is not just in the technology giants that we are seeing this incredible revenue potential. This is Lovable.dev. This is one of our European whales at the moment. And you can see that, like, from early days in November of last year, they are in an incredible growth cycle. And again, they're in a growth cycle, but actually just remembering that, at one point during this year, this company had like just under 35 employees. So again, you're seeing this incredible revenue growth without a corresponding massive increase in cost. Now, they have a bunch of technology costs, but I suppose I should be clear and say labor cost. So we've talked a lot about the acceleration of AI, why nothing is slowing down. We've talked about the huge investment that's going into AI, and we've talked about the revenue opportunity coming out of it. Now, I am not going to spoil the game for the webinar in 2 weeks' time, where Brian, one of our founding partners, and Surab are going to talk in detail about investment in AI. But just to give you the very high level here of what's going on, is that obviously in terms of investment in AI, about 70% of all capital invested by VCs last year globally ended up inside an AI. Um, and also, what's very unusual is the money that's being invested into AI. Just as an example here, another agentic coding platform, Cursor. Just to be clear, we are not seeing any slowdown also in terms of the valuations. Cursor is doubling its valuation every 8 to 10 weeks or so. But that's not because of a hype cycle. That's because every 8 to 10 weeks they have a new revenue number coming out. So actually, very exciting time to be investing in the right companies and seeing their growth over time. We are seeing a large number of I guess, in Q1 this year, there was a large number of very large deals. So the way I always like to think about this is it's always important when you read headline numbers about investment in AI that you kind of dig into it, because it would be easy to say, oh well, that's because we're seeing these 40 billion investments by OpenAI, and we're seeing these large rounds. That is true, but actually, even when you add up all those large rounds, you're still seeing an underlying investment in early stage startups and scale ups, that to the like of which we've never actually seen before. Um, just want to very briefly talk about one or two numbers here. So, as I said, if you want to look at 2024, we were looking at a total global funding of something like 360, call it 370 billion between friends. 37% of that was AI. We've already seen how much bigger that has turned this year. We've this number 86 2 years ago, 131. It is kind of mind-boggling to think that we'll probably get to a position next year where we see something in the region of $250 billion in global VC investment in AI. And unsurprisingly, where we're seeing so much of that done is we're seeing about a third of all of these deals being done in America, and about 60% of the VC capital in America now going into AI based deals. Um, just to give you a sense of, from our perspective in Sure Valley, like this is where we see the opportunity for AI. So, if you look here at this is, something you need to think about as well. There are kind of two games to play here. You have the big tech game, the open AIs, etc., who are investing in the foundational infrastructure and as to what's going on. And then you have that is where the huge checks are being written, the 4 billion, 5 billion, 10 billion checks are being written. The real opportunity for investors is to invest in what we call the vertical AI stack, or the enablement layer. So as I said, these are various areas that we have invested in over the last year and will continue to invest in. It is a incredibly exciting time to be investing in AI, and to see what's going to happen next. You can see in here the layers that I talked about: the AI development layer, the engineering layer, and then directly above it, the plugin layer, the agentic frameworks, the co-pilots, everything that next week Barry and John are going to be talking about in terms of their webinar on AI agents. We've come to the end of my show today. So again, just a reminder that next week we're going to be talking about AI agents and their transformational role in business, give you a real sense of what's going on in agents, how fast they're evolving, and the impact that they're really, really going to have on the day to day in all sorts of industries. And then Monday week, the 29th, you can join Brian and Sarab to talk about deep dive into investing in AI and the opportunities and strategies. The guys are going to talk about like how do you actually process AI opportunities? What should you be looking for? Where are the winners going to be? Where are the losers going to be? How do you do due diligence properly on them? Um, and with that, thank you very much for joining me here today. It's been a whirlwind trip. I'm sure you can see through what's going on in AI and the state of AI. As I said, it is a fascinating space to be involved in right now, and the opportunity to just enjoy the wave, but also to be on the upside in terms of investing opportunities. Thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you next Monday for part 2.